What's up, everybody? Trinity here. Welcome back to the Second Street Marvel. I hope you're all having a very good day today. Welcome back to the morning movie chat. And guys, I apologize. I did not do the morning movie chat yesterday. Just kind of a busy week. Got a lot of things planned. Getting ready to have my 1 year anniversary here on YouTube coming up. So that will be on November 29th. And we're going to be doing a live stream on Saturday, November 30th. Going to bring a whole bunch of special guests on for that live stream. Going to be doing some giveaways and things like that. I just dropped a video of that this morning. On how to get entered into some of those giveaways. So, go check out that video. Make sure you give it a like or give it a dislike. I must have picked up a hater because somebody's been giving a lot of my videos dislikes lately, but that's absolutely okay. And today I've got a very special guest on the show once again. Very happy to have Stevie J's reviews here on the show. Thank you so much for being here, Stevie J.
No worries, mate. Thanks for having me. It's good to be on. It's been a little while since I've been on, I think, but yeah, no, it's great to be here, and yeah, looking forward to talking through some movie stuff.
Definitely. Been too long, man. I wish there wasn't such a time difference so we could have you on a little bit more often, but I totally understand the logistics of how everything works. It's not always easy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because we just had a time zone change here with daylight saving, so it's just pushed it even further apart. So yeah, it makes it tough. But it's good when I can come on. So yeah, glad I could be on today.
Yes. So I guess we probably got a lot to catch up on. I know we never actually got a chance to talk about some of the movies that have come out. That we've been out there and seen here lately. Like I know, obviously, we'll probably end up talking here about Charlie's Angels a little bit, but we also haven't even got a chance to talk about Terminator: Dark Fate. So
Right.
you actually had a chance to go see Terminator: Dark Fate. I know at one point you weren't going to, and then you kind of decided to out of the blue, which I totally understand that. If there's something you don't want to see, I mean, why go see it? But go ahead and what did you think about the movie?
Well, I suppose first of all, I said I wasn't going to go and see it, but I had a few people in my comments and stuff, and DM me and say they wanted me to see it and give my reaction to it. So um, yeah, I went and saw it, and it was so frustrating. It was one of those movies where I was just face palming like the whole time. Like obviously the first 10 minutes, and I hope no one minds if we talk spoilers. Is that okay with you?
Yeah,
Spoilers are
no, go
fine.
ahead and spoil it away. I think most people that want to go see this movie have either seen this movie already or they're not going to go see it and don't care about
Yeah,
the
fair enough.
spoilers.
So yeah, like that first 10 minutes where John dies, I was just like, "Oh, really? That's what you've done to the pivotal character throughout the entire franchise, and he's dead in the first 10 minutes. Oh man!" So like straight after that, I was like, "What am I in for here?" Um, I suppose one thing that I saw, if I'm to talk any pros, which there really isn't many, but if there's any pros, it's that it wasn't as woke as what I thought it was going to be. Like there was a lot of woke talk about it, and I guess the only thing really for me that was woke was the whole premise, the replacement, I guess, of the characters with female characters. Like obviously Linda Hamilton's an original character and she's awesome and all that, but yeah, I didn't really feel the woke vibes coming from it. All I felt was cringeworthy script overall.
Right.
Like to me, the script was just terrible, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, the T-800 now being someone who installs drapes and carries people's groceries. I was like, what the hell? What what are they doing here? Um, so I suppose I did hate it a lot, but um, one of the main reasons I didn't like it, and one of the things that put me off in the real beginning of it, and the first probably 30, 40 minutes of it was the actual editing. It really, really threw me off because and I don't know if you noticed it, but the editing was so quick cut and close ups. So the fight scenes to me, I was like, what's going on? What's going on? And after we've had movies like John Wick recently, which did the choreography so well. The whole time I was watching it, I was like, can we please just choreograph a fight? Just just choreograph a fight, and let's not worry about making it look fast and doing these quick cuts and close-ups and all that. And then the other thing that distracted me was particularly the Rev 9 and Grace fights. um you know she's throwing him around the room, and you could see like the CGI of his rubber legs flopping in the breeze. And I was just like, that A doesn't feel like Terminator, because to me, Terminator 2 and Terminator 1, the practical effects and the fight scenes were very basic. Really, it was the two characters essentially just pushing each other against walls and having normal fights. But it was the way they carried themselves, and acting wise, that made us still understand that they were Terminators and they were stronger than normal. So anyway, I don't want to ramble on too long, but that's my that's my initial thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think I agree pretty much with you, pretty much on everything there. Like you were saying, like with some of like the wokeness everybody was talking about. Like for me, I didn't notice any of that in there. I mean,
Mm,
obviously they played on a lot of things just going on in the world today, but nothing. I don't know, nothing I would say that was really out of place for what the movie was.
mm,
And like you said, I mean, I think some of the character development in there it just wasn't very well thought out. Now, like the John Connor thing, I don't really have a problem with that so much. Just because some of the other things that I kind of just feel about when doing a movie like this anyway, when we're messing with time travel, I know some people
mm,
had said that like, and one thing that I heard a lot of people say actually is that it kind of does away with all of the other prequels out there, other movie
mhm,
or the movies that came before it, I guess essentially. And me, I get that, but at the same time, I think that's part of like the time travel element of it is at some point it doesn't really matter. I mean, that's something that's just gonna happen in a movie like that when you like time
mm.
travel makes things very sloppy,
Yeah.
and I think I agree with what you're saying there. Like with like some of the action scenes, the editing of it was really bad. Like we didn't really get like a great introduction to the character. A lot of
Mm,
the first half hour of the movie just seems to go by so fast that it's really hard for it to like grab you and suck you in and make you want to
mm,
be entertained by it. It seemed like it was just a lot of cheap thrills, I guess, more than
mm.
anything, is what it seemed to be like for me. Now, I've talked, several times about the character, that they brought in, Danny herself. Just wasn't a very interesting
Dora.
character. Yeah, and like when I first, because it's funny because I watched Dora the Explorer, like I don't know, maybe about a month or two before I went and seen this, but like I watched it and I'm like, this character really just seems like Dora the Explorer. I mean, she had the
Yeah.
backpack, she had the dog, she had, her brother there. There's named Diego, which I understand it was her cousin in the cartoon, but I'm like, like, you got to try something here. I mean, they should have just went more with the Dora thing, if you ask me.
Yeah, they should have just had Eva Longoria and what's his name, Michael Pena in there as well, and it would have been complete.
Yes, yeah.
um,
Have you seen
yeah,
Dora the Explorer?
I have. Yeah, I took the kids to see it. They liked it. It was fun enough for them, so I'm okay with it. It wasn't a masterpiece by any stretch, but it was fun enough for the kids. So that's a tick for me.
Right. And
Um,
see, I kind of feel too like it was a movie that knew what it was and didn't try to be what it wasn't. It was just a fun,
yeah,
entertaining movie for the family you could take the kids to, and I think
yeah.
largely it's probably one of those movies out there that's probably not considered a flop,
Yeah,
like Terminator: Dark
it's
Fate.
not, it's not a bad, yeah, it's not a bad movie, really. And I think that I liked the bit in there, the bit where they actually turned it into cartoon Dora. I actually thought that was interesting. Like that was something different to do. And like you said, it knew what it was. And it was just, yeah, it was just a bit of a fun kind of movie, I guess. Um, and my kids liked it. So at the end of the day, if I take them to a kids movie and they like it, well, it's a win for me. So.
Right, right, yeah, and that's what I look for when when I'm taking going to one of these movies with my family is those kinds of things. Like, is it fun and entertaining? It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to have like the best special effects. It doesn't have to have all of these things.
Mm.
Like, hell, my kid, have you? I'm not sure if you've seen even like Woody Woodpecker, that I think it went direct to Netflix. It's one of those movies out there similar to the Door movie, where it looks like
Yeah,
it doesn't have a very high budget, but it's just a fun movie, and that's really
yeah,
about it.
yeah.
It's
It doesn't take much, really. It doesn't take much to excite the kids.
right, and I think
Yeah,
that's maybe movies like Terminator: Dark Fate and like Charlie's Angels could maybe learn some lessons from people who are making movies like this. Just have fun with a movie.
yep, absolutely. Dark Fate, it's going to be one of the biggest flops in history almost because it had a massive budget, 185 million, and it might not even you got to add marketing onto that. And so once you add the marketing on, you might be looking at 370 to 400 million it needs to make to break even. And it's sitting, I think, last night I was talking to someone, it's 233 million at the moment. So, and we're in what, its third week. So it's
Yeah.
it's not going to make its money back. It's just a matter of how much it's going to lose, really.
Right. Yeah, and that's just a shame too. I mean, we see this going on with so many of these movies, and in the thumbnail this morning, I put Charlie's Angels in there and Terminator: Dark Fate in there because it seems like both of these movies have pretty much met a dark fate at the box office. And I mean,
Yep.
aside from just like the movies themselves, because I mean, ultimately, we don't know how good a movie is or bad a movie is until we've actually seen it, till it actually hits the theater.
Mm.
But it seems like both of these movies were pretty dead in the water before we even got them in the movie theater. And why do you think
Yeah.
that is?
I think it's marketing, to be honest. I think it's marketing. I think that the trailers for Terminator were terrible. So for me, watching the trailers, and if for any movie, the trailer should really make you sit there and go, "Oh, I want to see more of that. I want to find out more about what's going on in that movie." So the trailers for me for Dark Fate initially were not interesting at all, and I didn't like the theme music in the background either. And we sort of saw the same things we've already seen in Terminator. We saw somebody fighting with the Terminator. We saw him sort of liquefy and change into something else. There was a couple of new bits. I actually, one thing that I did like about Terminator was the part where he's walking along through the prison or whatever, and all the guards are on him, and all the knives start shooting out of his back. Or that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it's the marketing because the trailers for Terminator didn't intrigue me at all. And then what we got in the trailers, what we got in the film didn't really live up to anything either. But going along with that and this kind of woke business, something that I feel like kills these movies is the woke marketing beforehand when they don't even have that much woke stuff in it. Like Tim Miller came out and was saying, "Oh, if people don't like this movie, then you must hate women." And now Elizabeth Banks has said that about Charlie's Angels as well. And it's just like, what are you people doing? What are you? Why are you marketing it this way? Don't allow that because you're going to kill at least half of your audience instantly. So, to me, mate, I reckon it's marketing that's been the biggest reason why they've started so poorly. And the quality of the film is what's made them continue to drop off at the box office. But yeah, for me, it's the marketing that makes them start dead in the water.
I agree, actually. And it's so funny because like I'm not one of these people out there that's like, oh, woke this, woke that, or anything. But like it's admittedly, obviously something that these filmmakers are doing during the promotion process. I mean, I would
Mm.
you would think that people had learned their lesson. Maybe it's the people, the studios, or hell, even their PR people that would you would think they would have a clue by now that people don't
Mm.
want to see these certain things or hear these certain things about a movie before they're going hitting the theater. I mean, I think largely
Yeah.
they need to focus more on, okay, the trailers. Here's what the movie is. Here's what it's about. This whole thing. Like even I know even before we even were really getting like some of the trailers for Charlie's Angels, the director had gone out there, in some, some publicity things, saying, all these different things, like believe women and all this
Yeah.
stuff. And like me, I'm
Yeah.
like who, like, I don't even know what these statements mean. Like, what does that
Yeah.
mean? Believe women? Like, is there some sort of disbelief out there that we have that we don't believe women? Or I don't know what this perception is out there by whether it's these directors or these studios or whatnot that decide to
Mm.
say these things in these interviews, and it just ends up hurting their film more than it does help it. And I mean, to me, I think part of it is you got to appeal to everybody. Like, you're wanting to, like, if you're wanting to promote, like the feminism, women's empowerment and stuff like that. I mean, really, you got to focus on the men in that case more so than the
Yeah.
women.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of backfires really in the end on in a few different ways. Like you lose the male audience, and you also, I mean, when you look at it, these movies that flop where they've put out a big, like sort of feminist agenda, these women aren't going to see it. Like the people that they're trying to market to aren't the people who are going to go and watch the movie anyway. So they kind of kill themselves, marketing wise on that as well. And look, Dark Fate will be massive, a massive flop. But Charlie's Angels only made 8 million in the in the first weekend. And when you
Yeesh.
take into consideration a normal 60% drop off at the box office, that's like 3 million for the second week. That's like
Right.
all time bad. That is all time bad.
Yeah, that is, and I think these movies, if anything, should send out that signal to all the other studios, all the other directors, producers, and everything out there that
Yeah.
this is not the way to approach. How would you say, promoting your movie? I mean,
Yeah, promoting him.
and I mean, like, sure, like, I mean, maybe they look at it from the Disney standpoint where Captain Marvel did good still, right? It broke 1 billion with everything that
Yeah.
Brie Larson said to make and upset people, and yet Disney still seems to be knocking it out of the park because I mean, the company themselves haven't gone out and done that, but a lot of the people promoting their films have, and they've still, I guess you could say, been successful. And I don't know. I just think there's so many things at play here. I just don't see that at this point, especially with the rise of social media and how popular it is, how much everybody's on it, talking about these things like we're talking about right now, that there's still studios out there allowing their people to basically go out there and alienate their audience. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I agree. It feels like they're completely out of touch. But like you said before, don't they have like a whole bunch of young people like in their 20s that are just on social media all the time, checking in, seeing what the feel is amongst the public about what they're doing and how things are trending and all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't seem like they're doing that, or at least it doesn't come across that way, because it wouldn't take much. I mean, yeah, and I was thinking the same thing just before he said that about Captain Marvel. Maybe they've looked at that and gone, okay, that's the template we need to follow to be successful. I mean, forget that it had Infinity War and Endgame either side of it, but you know, maybe that's what they're thinking. But I just can't understand why they don't realize at this point in the game that that kind of marketing it just it just alienates a massive part of your potential audience. And like you said, you want to be for any film, you want people to see it. It all comes down to dollars in the end. So why do that? Just promote it to everybody and try and get everybody to come and see your movie. So yeah, to me, I don't understand it, and I don't know why they wouldn't have. They got a lot of money. I don't know why they wouldn't have 10, 15, 20, 100 people on social media just reporting back, okay, this is what's happening. Most people are saying this. This is the feel out there. I mean, they could even just be putting polls out there if they wanted to, putting, on their Twitter accounts and whatever, just running polls all the time to get the feel from the public. But I don't know. Either that or they don't care. Maybe they just don't care what we think.
That very well could be. You know what? And that's something I honestly hadn't even thought of right until you just brought that up. Because I mean, at some point, sometimes, like, especially in a business, you take losses, and sometimes you
Mm.
gotta take losses. You know what I mean? I mean, it just happens. Not everything's gonna be a win. I mean, movies themselves in itself are kind of a gamble, but I mean, it seems like going out and setting a movie up for failure before it even hits the theaters just seems to be the wrong thing to do. And then you go and once it actually hits the theaters, after you've already made some mistakes in promoting the movie, you go and like they double down on it, like they double down on this thing and say, oh, you have to go see this movie, otherwise if you don't go see it, it only proves this, that this male stereotype in Hollywood about action films and all this stuff, like the director said here, Elizabeth Banks. And I'm just like, I don't even get that. Like, what
Yeah,
does that even mean? Like that makes absolutely no sense. I mean, Charlie's Angels was successful in the early 2000s.
yeah, yeah. And I sort of look at it as though when people say these stupid statements like Elizabeth Banks, and I haven't had any issues with her previously, but
Right.
coming out and saying this silly stuff, I'm like, so has no movie been made before 2019 that starred a female? Like, that's what it sounds like they're saying. This is the very first female-led film. And I think John Matrix actually in his video mentioned it that even Captain Marvel, like objectively, it was a bad movie, but it was still successful. It still had a female lead. It made over $1 billion. So clearly, people aren't sexist, and the Marvel audience is predominantly men. So it's not really a it's not really a gender issue. It's
Right.
and when I saw that tweet, I was very angry about it, let's say, or upset.
Right.
Because I'm thinking back to all these characters that I love, like, and I think Alan Ripley was one I went back to,
Hmm.
because that's the longest time ago that I can remember liking a female character in kind of an action sort of film, action character. Alien and Aliens. I'm not a massive fan of Alien 3 and Resurrection, but those first two films, she was amazing. She was fantastic. And people even today, like me, still love those kind of movies with a female action star in it. No
Right.
problem at all.
Yeah.
What we don't like is a bad script, bad
Right.
directing, bad acting, it's terrible storytelling. Well,
Right.
those are the things that we don't like and we don't want to see. It's got nothing to do with the gender stuff.
Right. Agreed. And to me, I think, like especially on a movie like a Charlie's Angels, okay? This movie most of all, if this is like the type of movie that you can use to go out there and put some of your maybe some of your feminism and things like that in there. But what does that ultimately mean? I mean, to me, that kind of means that what you've got to do is you've got to attract the men. You've got to bring the men
Mm,
into it by getting them to want to go see it, by having some sex appeal. And that doesn't mean that you have to hypersexualize anything like
mm,
that. I mean, that's just not how it works. I mean, even if you watch the old TV show of Charlie's Angels, still none of that was like hypersexualized. I mean, it was maybe a little bit, a little bit more
mm,
on the sexualized side, but I think it seems like they don't want to play on that. Like they're just only trying to appeal to women, which then at that point they are basically alienating completely like 50% of the people that would go see the movie, when you don't have to do that. And it's not saying that somebody has to be wearing skimpy clothes or anything like that.
yeah,
I mean, women are sexy no matter what. I mean, sometimes even when they're not so sexy, you know what I mean? I mean, and
yeah,
it just
yeah.
seems like they don't want to play on that at this point. Like, and that's ultimately, I feel like that's something that's hurting a movie like this movie, Charlie's Angels. And again, I haven't seen it, so I don't know that there's no kind of sexual appeal in it. But to me, I mean, if you're going to make that movie and you want to make it about, empowering women and things like that, I mean, a lot of the power that women have over men is due to their sexual appeal for men. And that's
Hmm.
not saying that they have to be, because not all men are the same. Not all men look at women as like sexual objects or anything. I mean, I certainly don't. I mean, sometimes I see a sexy woman, I'm like, hey, she's pretty hot, and
Yeah,
I'm not really I'm not having sexual thoughts. I'm like, man, she's just hot. That's really about what it comes down to.
yeah. Well, it's just an objective reality, isn't it? Like, men are men and women are women, and how many females went out to watch Aquaman to see Jason Momoa with his shirt off? Quite a
Right.
lot, I would say. Quite a lot.
Yes.
um, and I agree, mate. Like, there's no need for it to be too overt and stuff like that, but it's still a part of reality. It's a part of normal life, and to make characters relatable as well, um, you've got to make them a little bit at least like real life. Um, and there's been so many characters. maybe not so much with the sexy side of things, but you look at Uma Thurman in Kill Bill, and she was a kick-ass character, and anyone who loves those movies absolutely loves her as the main action star, and she did a great job with it. Tarantino did a good job too, but you know things like that, and there was characters in that too, like some of the women that she was fighting against. They had more of that sex appeal kind of thing, like midriff shirts and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't kind of like the focus wasn't on the sex appeal kind of side of it, but it was there. So it was still there in the background, but like, then she's stabbing someone in the head with a knife. But it was still kind of subconsciously there. So you could just enjoy that extra part of it. It wasn't the main focus, but it was just an extra part of it that was there. So yeah,
Right.
I don't know. I think it's one of those, they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to be, having the strong female empowerment without recognizing any of the, I guess, standard feminine traits that people all enjoy.
Right. Yeah, agreed. I completely agree with that 100%. And and like you said, I'm glad you brought that up too, like about Quentin Tarantino and the Kill Bill stuff like that, and he's done that plenty in his movies, I mean, I don't know. I mean, just I just for me, I just don't understand what these people like, why they go out there and do these things. I mean, like can guarantee you a lot more people would have went out and watched the Charlie's Angels had it not been for this marketing, this push that people are out there doing. And
Mhm.
again, I mean, like I get it,
Yeah.
you get on social media and you see all these things in your face, these people reacting to things in these different ways, but ultimately a lot of I think they look too much into social media and things like that, and that maybe they just don't realize that most people themselves, when they're on social media, aren't being themselves. Most people are being some sort of maybe uh, I wouldn't say maybe they're just being themselves, but how would you say more
Like
grandiose,
an
more. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
like an exaggerated version of themselves,
yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah.
And I just don't
Yeah.
get why anybody would try to appeal to that. I mean, just tell stories like human
Mm.
stories, even if it's within the confines of a fantastical movie like a Terminator: Dark Fate. Um,
Yeah. Well, I suppose there's another avenue of thought that perhaps they do understand all of this stuff, and they're going for like you know, a marketing by negativity kind of model. So, with Joker, for example, Joker got all that negative press and everything and like that, and which actually helped it. But the difference, I guess, being that Joker was a really good product, and
right,
it didn't actually need that. But maybe they're just saying, oh, any kind of press is going to be good press. So let's just make these weird, wild statements, and hopefully that will just get more attention to it. Because otherwise, maybe no one will even look at it whatsoever. Um, but I think they could also just ask any kind of person who has people management skills, or anything like that, because if you think about the statements that are made, if anyone says something to you and makes a statement about you, automatically it's going to put you off, isn't it? It's going to make you feel like you're going to get your back up, because you could just use any example, but like imagine what it feels like to us is that Elizabeth Banks is talking directly to us. So, imagine someone in real life saying to you, "Oh, if you don't like this, then you hate women." Straight away, you'd be like, "What? What are you talking about?" And so, when we see these tweets and stuff from directors and all that, we think exactly the same thing. It's like, I don't care what it is you're actually saying, but the fact that you're just telling me something about how I feel about something, sorry, you know, I'm out. I don't want to hear it.
right. Yeah, yeah, I completely I agree with you there. I mean, like I said, it seems like they're trying to focus on one, just like one core group of their of
Mm,
audience. And I mean, I think largely overall, I mean, like it's, and this is exactly what we're saying, you got to appeal to everybody. Like
mm,
if you want to, like, we want to take our wives or girlfriends or whatnot to
mm,
see these films. We don't want to just be like,
mm,
hey, go alone, go with your girlfriends, because ultimately, I mean, the movie going experience is supposed to be a shared experience, but then
mm,
you're kind of like alienating half of your audience by even going out there and doing these things. And by all means, I mean, male films aren't male-led films like that, like a John Wick. Those aren't appealing to most women, but yet
No.
women will still go see them.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's just odd that that they would do that. Like even like a kids film. I mean, like you're not gonna do something that just appeals to the kids. Like in most kids films out there, you go see, there's still things in it that appeal to adults and make us want to see them as well. Like we were saying earlier, Dora the Explorer is a perfect example. Like I went into that movie thinking like, this is gonna be just a just a chunky movie about this cartoon, and I went into it and I was sitting there like, I was like, dang, like this movie is actually good, but again,
Mm.
they didn't do anything outrageous in the marketing of it, and again,
Yep.
the film knew what it was.
Yeah, exactly. And like talking about films knowing what they are. What are your thoughts on this? Like, imagine if Elizabeth Banks came out and said, "Do you know what? I've just made this fun movie. It's just, it's cheesy. It's a bit of action, a bit of fun, a bit of girls kicking people in the face. Have a laugh, have a bit of fun with it. That's all it's about." If she had have Mark like come out and said that, then most people would probably been like, "Okay, I get what it is. My expectations aren't, super high, but if there's nothing else on, if like for me, if my wife wants to go see it, cool, let's go see it." But um, that to me, that was at least that's honest marketing. Do you know what I mean? That's not like,
Yeah.
this is a masterpiece. I've created this for the masses. This is a masterpiece of a film. Um, I would have that honest marketing would appeal to me
Right.
way more.
Yeah, I mean, look at what they did with the Charlie's Angels films that came out in the 2000s, in the
Mm,
in the early 2000s. I mean, those were probably I don't even know that they were a little like sexualized. I don't even think they were that. They were just
mm.
fun, goofy
No, not too
movies.
much.
And I
Yeah,
and I think that's exactly the way they were marketed too, is something that was just supposed to be a fun, movie that was basically just a remake on, an old TV show.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, you're right. I don't remember him being really that sexualized. I mean, I think there was the standard kind of innuendos and that kind of stuff, but I don't remember it being overly sexual. I do remember the first one at least being pretty enjoyable. Really, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I liked Drew Barrymore and Cameron Diaz at the time. Lucy Liu's fine for me, more so in action than in anything else, but. Um, yeah, I think it was one of those movies at the time I watched, and I was like, yeah, that was a little bit of fun. Nothing
Yeah.
too serious, nothing too crazy. Mm.
Yeah, and then even when you seen like the behind the scenes, and when the actors are sitting there in interviews and stuff, they're just having fun, and you could tell that they were having
Mm.
fun making the movie. And in any of the interviews and stuff that I've seen with any of the cast members from this movie, just didn't seem like they were having fun. I mean, maybe one of the lost elements in movie making these days is actually having fun making the movie.
Yeah, well, it seems so. There's no fun in making them, and there's no fun in watching them. No,
Right.
no. But you're right. You're right. And look, directors play a huge part. Obviously, they're the ones in control of the film overall. And something that I didn't realize, but I learned I think yesterday about Charlie's Angels was the cinematographer, which I keep getting his name wrong. I think it's Bill Pope or Bill Hope. I can't remember which one, but either way,
Oh, probably Bill
it's got a
Pope.
Bill in it and it's got a Pope. Yeah. So he was the cinematographer for Charlie's Angels. And he's done The Matrix and Alita, just as a couple of other examples. And so it says to be 100% that the direction was wrong in this, because you can have a great cinematographer like him or like many of the other ones, but in the editing, if you, as a director, if you make direction choices in the editing and in the scene choices, the cinematography was it's out the window. I mean, he's probably given us some of the best. Um, but when you chop it up in editing and decide you're going to make the fight scene cut from the wide shot to a boot pushing off the wall to back to a wide shot, and then all of a sudden she's wrapped around his neck, giving him a chokehold. It's like it just turns it into a complete mess.
Right. Yeah, man, and that's crazy that you mentioned that, because I didn't realize that Bill Pope was the cinematographer for this movie. Bill Pope
Yeah,
has done some of my favorite movies of all time.
absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
and I've talked about him plenty here on the channel before as well, because the one person that I noticed that he seems to work with really well is Sam Raimi. Like him and Sam Raimi seem to
Yeah,
just make pure cinematic bliss. I mean, look at Spider-Man 2, okay?
yeah, that was a
Um,
great movie. Yeah,
and even Spider-Man 3. Now, it has story problems, admittedly it does, but I mean, look at what he did there. And like you said, The
yeah,
Matrix. And I mean, yeah, it just goes to prove that it doesn't it's not the cinematographer. I mean, it is ultimately the director of these films. I mean,
yeah,
hell, if I'm not wrong, I believe I'm correct here that it was Mick G who actually directed the Charlie's Angels films of the early 2000s.
yeah.
this
That's right. Yeah,
this guy is a music video director. I first learned about it from Korn, the band Korn on some of their
yeah, yeah,
DVDs, and I'm just like, wow, okay. So he goes and actually makes, and you go and watch those movies. They were just fun, entertaining films, and you could see, kind of his background in,
yeah,
I guess, music videos come through in that movie, and I thought it was really well done. And that's not to say that every movie he's done is a good one, but yeah, I mean,
yeah, yeah.
certainly something like that is wow. I didn't realize that was Bill Pope that did the
Yeah.
cinematography for this
Well,
movie.
hey, you could be forgiven for thinking that Elizabeth Banks had another credit as cinematographer as well. She had 4 credits for herself, so maybe she should have given some of those credits up. I think, like maybe the director and the screenwriting, she should have just given those ones up to somebody else with a little more experience.
Right.
Um, I think and to me, one of the first things actually I laughed at when I saw the first trailer for Charlie's Angels was that it was like what they do for directors that are acclaimed, like Steven Spielberg or one of these big directors. And like the trailer started playing, and then the credit floats in, and it's like from director Elizabeth Banks. I was like,
Right.
really? Like, is that supposed to mean something? I,
Yeah.
I got nothing against her as an actress, but I've never seen her direct anything amazing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like for me, like I've liked Elizabeth Banks' work. As an actress, I like her.
Mm.
She's been in some of my favorite movies, like 40-Year-Old Virgin, Zack and Miri Make a Porno. Hell, she's even
Mhm.
in those Lego movies, and I think she's good in those. And of course, that's just voice acting. But yeah, and to me, I think that's something I've talked a little bit about that here too. Is like if you're gonna take on a movie and you're gonna be writing, you're gonna be producing, you're gonna be directing, like it has to be a movie that really has either very little expectations or something that, I mean, like done by a filmmaker who has had all of that experience before. Because
Mm.
as far as I know, this is probably the first movie, and I'll have to go back and look at her credits as far as being a writer, producer. It's just too much on one person, especially. And I really feel
Yeah.
this way when it comes down to being a producer and a director on a film. Like the producer and the director are the two people who are going to have the hugest influence on the film, aside from maybe the executive producer too, who's mostly
Mm.
there for funding, for
Yeah.
funding means. I just think that it's a mistake in doing that. I mean, I think even George Lucas himself has proven that it's a hard task to do. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and at the moment, I guess the timing is just perfect because we've got Joker on one hand, and then we've got movies like Dark Fate and Charlie's Angels, and they couldn't be further apart in their quality. But Todd Phillips wrote and directed Joker, and so, but there's someone who has experience in doing these things, in producing, in writing, in directing, and so he has some of that experience, but he also has the experience of dealing with the other people involved in making the film. So, if you look at the composer or Larry Sher, the cinematographer, they've worked together on The Hangover and stuff before, but he can work with people, and he worked with Joaquin Phoenix really well, and so also with that, and I think I mentioned in one of my videos, the fact that there was ad lib changes throughout the film and script changes and scene changes and stuff like that. Some people have called that a negative thing, and to me, it's a complete positive because, especially him being the one who wrote the script, why would you want to keep something if it wasn't working, if it didn't feel right
right.
when you were shooting it? Why would you want to keep it? And so to me, like that just right to me shows his integrity is up that next level because he's happy to change it. If he doesn't feel like it's working, or somebody even suggests it doesn't work, then he's happy to change it and do it on the fly. But I think that for direction wise, as a direct example of these two films, like Terminator and um, Charlie's Angels, Todd Phillips was able to cohesively get all these people to work together and create something really amazing. Whereas like Charlie's Angels, Elizabeth Banks is trying to do it all herself, and she hasn't really been successful in any of the areas that she was in charge of. So there's something to be said for that. That managing people side of things as well.
You're right. Yeah, I actually agree with that 100%. Because like you said, Todd Phillips. I mean, he's got a proven track record of doing those things. And again, to me, it comes down to one of the things, and we talked about this the last time, I believe, as well, is these people from comedic backgrounds who seem to be really good at
Mm,
drama, and even people from dramatic backgrounds who are really great at doing comedy. And again,
hmm
I think a lot of that has to do with like being able to improvise, keeping things open and keeping them loose. I mean, it just seems to be something that plays very well towards that. Where I guess they're more of, man. I wouldn't even. I guess I wouldn't even know how to say that. I mean, because I mean, they're artists in their own right. All of them are, but it just seems like they're like when you're in that kind of in that kind of in that kind of a, I would say, environment, you're just more susceptible to those kind of things. You're having to stay on your toes and work
mm,
with things because you're working like with comedy and drama. You're working with human emotionality and things
yeah.
like that. And yeah, I think and again, just like we're saying, I think it's a dangerous thing to let one person have so much oversight over a film, especially when they don't have the experience. Like you've got a little bit
Mm,
of experience, directing movies. Maybe you've done a little bit of producing, you've done a little bit of writing,
mm,
but maybe like studios need to take a step back when they're looking at
mm,
bigger films like a Charlie's Angels where they got a bigger budget and saying,
yeah.
okay, like we need a little more oversight here. We'll let you direct the movie and write the movie, but we can't let you necessarily produce, act, and all these different kinds of things in the movie. It seems for a lot of people, it just seems to be the ultimate challenge.
Yeah, definitely. I think Sony as well seem to be really bad for it as a studio in terms of choosing these people who are going to run their films. Like Ghostbusters 2016, that to me will always be a great example of what not to do. And I, that could have been a good film. I wasn't a fan of replacing all the characters with female ones, more so from a story standpoint, because it was the way that it was portrayed as like a standalone film, but it was connected in some way. The way they did that was terrible to me. Um, but the script was terrible. The CGI and effects were terrible. Like if you could if you compared the 1984, I think it was, version with the 2016 version, effects wise, you would probably be more interested in the 1984 version than in the 2016 version. So to me, like, yes, these studios, what are they thinking getting these people who are lack the experience to handle these films? Like, I just I don't know. Is it just because Elizabeth Banks has been good in the movie she's acted in? Let's just let her direct it. She's had a minor credit of producing this or directing that, or she did something over here. But to give all of those things to one person, to me, is just crazy. Crazy.
Yeah, definitely, and yeah, I like that you brought up that like you say, like the old Terminator, the 1984 Terminator. I mean, that movie, and that's something I feel kind of hurts a movie like a Terminator Dark Fate anyway, is the fact that you're trying, that was in 1984, right? And then the sequel to that, T2, came out in 1991, and then then through the marketing they were saying that this movie, this new Terminator Dark Fate is supposed to kind of do it's ignoring all the sequels that came after Terminator 2 when at the
Mm.
very beginning of the movie they did something that kind of just really makes it largely where it doesn't matter what what movie came before it, because it's kind of
Yeah.
doing away with some of that story and some of that lore that has been going on anyway. and
Yeah.
and then like you're saying, even when it comes down to the effects, there's I think largely in Hollywood these days, it seems like there's far too much trying to do something too big and grandiose on screen when it doesn't take that. Like, practical effects are a thing, and that's what makes them work. That's why we get great filmmakers out there who can make
Mm.
these good films with practical effects. And to me, I think that's something we need to see more of out there in Hollywood, as opposed to, yeah, and this kind of goes into the whole Martin Scorsese argument of these movies being manufactured
Yeah.
for audiences, as opposed to just people, artists essentially making art.
Yep. 100%. Have we talked about Alien before and the production of Alien? I'm not sure if we've talked about it before, but
No, no.
um, that's really interesting. I watched this documentary on the making of Alien, and it's actually a really interesting documentary, which the name escapes me right now. But and it goes into exactly what you're saying. There was so much effort that went into that film, and you know, from the writers in the beginning, and the story started off as kind of a little bit different to what we got, but the premise was the same. I think it was in the beginning, it was not a spaceship. It was going to be like an airplane or something that this kind of took place on, and then it just developed. But the writers, they were really struggling to get a studio to take up this idea and go with it. And then they got the script in front of Ridley Scott, and he was all on board with it, and immediately kind of had a vision for it as well himself. And so once he was on board, the budget quadrupled almost to get this film off the ground. And so things were progressing. And then one of the key things that I found really interesting was they engaged, or Ridley Scott engaged, this artist. So he had nothing to do with films really. He might have had a few credits or whatever, but they engaged this artist just because they liked the work that he'd done. And so he was the one who conceived all of the art for the aliens, the look of the aliens, the look of the spaceship, and all of those things. When they go down and actually go inside and see that dead alien in there, the giant alien in there, all of those things that were in there were created by this one artist. And like you said, they were all practical effects. So those big sets, they actually built them. And this artist was there the whole time, making sure that they looked right and they matched his concept of the art. And this documentary goes into talking about how he would be there until midnight, sculpting the little pieces and making little changes to things and painting it exactly the right color and making sure it was right. And
Nice.
then with the set of the ship, the Nostromo, they actually built it, and you know how it felt like it was really claustrophobic. Like it really felt like the crew were trapped there. And what they did originally was they built it about 2 feet higher than what we saw in the film.
Hmm.
And Ridley Scott looked at it through the camera and he was like, you know what? Nah, this doesn't seem right. I don't like the look of this. It doesn't look claustrophobic. It doesn't look restrictive enough. So he made the set designer cut that entire, because that was one big set piece. He made them cut the entire thing down by 2 feet to bring it down lower on top of their heads. And so, to me, that's just all of those things you were talking about, all of that effort that goes into it, all the practical effects. And for seemingly a small thing, just to bring the roof down a little bit, or to have a sculpture or have a set piece look real. But we can feel it when we watch it. We can absolutely feel it when we watch it. And it makes such a difference to the movie going experience to be able to feel that effort and really be able to relate to what's going on in the movie.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with that 100%. And I think that's just something, I mean, like I mean, about like, whether it's, no matter what you're doing, whether it's movies, you're doing comic books, you're doing music, movies, anything like that. I mean, it comes down to artistry. I mean, you got to be an
Mhm.
artist out there while you're doing these things. And sometimes that means, compromising on what you want, on what your vision is. And,
Mhm.
I mean, everybody, being really critical and looking at these things, and, saying like, like just the things like, does this appeal to everybody? I mean, is this something, is it just me? And, sometimes I think, also, with some of these things, people are not really busy thinking about what's going to be fun and entertaining for people. They're just thinking more about, okay, what is it I want to say with this specific piece, and that works a lot in like the
Yeah,
music industry. With a song, I
yeah,
mean, you can have one song on a whole album that flops, but when you're like your whole thing is a movie, I mean, that's all you've got to go with. You have to stick to that one thing and try to make
mm,
it entertaining for everybody. And if you want to put your little messages or whatever thing you have to say in it, go ahead and inject that in a sensical way where
mm,
and you're gonna have to make some compromises here, but it seems
yeah,
like a lot of people these days don't want to make any kind of compromises, no matter what,
yeah.
and to the detriment of their movies, their studios, and things like that.
Absolutely, and artistic integrity, I feel like is something that's been lost a lot in Hollywood, um, and one of the most exciting examples of that for me lately is Jeff Fowler with Sonic. I mean, it's such a simple formula to me, and I'm sure it costs the studios a lot of money to redo, but I think they're gonna make that money back at the box office because for me, for example, like Sonic's probably not a movie I would have ever seen before. I liked the game when I was a kid and all that,
Right.
but it wasn't something that just interested me. But then when I saw Jeff Fowler was going to delay the movie to make Sonic look better, I was like, you know what? This guy actually has some integrity. He's listening to the fans. So when this comes out, I'm definitely going to go see it at the cinema, if for nothing else, just to support him.
Mm-hmm.
But then now that we've seen the most recent trailer come out, it actually looks pretty good. It actually, looks pretty entertaining. So I think that's a really good example of that artistic integrity that's sort of lacking. People are just too easily throwing out their integrity out the window for pushing these contrived agendas. And I don't understand why. You can create a film that has themes and messages in it, as you said, without pushing it on people and making it an agenda driven thing. Like one of the best things for me when I go to a movie, and I can experience a thought provoking film. I don't want to be necessarily told what to think, but I want to be made to think. So a good movie to me should pose questions to us as an audience and then make us think about it and have to think about it for hours or days afterwards about how we feel about it. So it posed, a particular question, theme, social issue, whatever it is, and it doesn't push one side or the other. It just allows us to consume what they're giving us and then think about it and go, what do I actually think about that? Which way would I go in that situation?
Right. Yeah, agreed. And that's something, yeah, I mean, that is a great point, is, making something that's actually thought provoking as opposed to something that's just so on the nose that it turns people away. Because I mean, you're
Yeah.
actually putting things in there on purpose to make people feel a certain way, when you need to put things in there to maybe bring out different emotions out of different people, and where it's not so obvious. And I know I've seen that in plenty of movies where they put these messages in there, or things like that, but it's done in the right way. Like, I'm not have you ever seen the movie The Woodsman? I think that's
No,
the
I've
name.
never seen that one.
It's this one. It's got Kevin Bacon in it. If that's the one I'm thinking of, I'm pretty sure it's The Woodsman. Now this movie it's a very good movie, and it's about something I'm pretty much disgusted by, and that's child molesters. And
Hmm.
this movie is about Kevin Bacon. He gets released out of prison. He had been convicted of having sex with a kid, and
Hmm.
he was a convicted pedophile. And then but the whole movie is basically him trying to move on, trying to get away from those ways, trying to shut out
Yeah.
his
Urges and
attraction to
whatever.
kids. And I watched the movie, and like I'm so confused by it, because I'm like, man, like I feel bad for this guy. I feel sympathetic towards him. Like, he's trying to make a change here. And even in the movie, he
Yeah.
does a thing where he actually goes and protects some kids from somebody else who is out there,
Mm.
like preying on children.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, like it's really provoking for me, because I'm pretty much against that kind of stuff, man. Like, I do not sympathize with child molesters or
No.
anything like
No.
that. Not even in the slightest bit. I mean, there's really only one course of justice to be served on these people. But you can see
Yeah.
throughout the movie, like, he's wrestling with him trying to change. He actually gets a girlfriend in the movie, but then he actually sees,
Yeah.
and here's the thing, is like, he's out there in the world, and he's living across the street from a school, like he shouldn't be. But
Hmm.
we can see, like, but he knows what to look out for. He notices a guy out there who is actually concentrating on the children and preying on this one particular child. And you see him kind of getting into it and intervening in certain ways, and you almost think like, man, this dude's he's gonna go back. He's gonna do something too. But then he actually ends up protecting this kid, and
Right.
beats up this other guy who is trying to cause harm to these children. And
Yeah.
it's one of those movies like, man, man, it just gets me like, I don't like this. I don't like that you're making child molesters, making me feel sympathetic towards them, and making me think that, okay, maybe they can be rehabilitated in that kind of way. But the
Hmm.
movie was really well done, and I don't think it's really showing any sympathy towards
Yeah.
those kinds of perpetrators. But it was just a thought-provoking movie, and
Yeah.
like you're saying, it made me feel weird in the sense that, man, it makes me feel uncomfortable liking this movie because of the subject matter and everything that's going on in it. And I think that's what
Yeah.
makes it such a damn good movie.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like anytime I feel, for me anyway, like anytime I feel conflicted by what's going on, as in I can't decide how I feel about it. To me, it's a well done film. Um, One of the other ones that I like, in this kind of vein, and not quite to the extreme of what you were talking about, because obviously, pedophilia is some horrendous stuff, but um, Platoon is another one that really does this for me. So it presents both sides of war, I guess, and through Charlie Sheen's character, he's narrating it, and we get his dialogue, but it really presents the two sides um, of the views on that war, because you've got him himself. He's conflicted. He doesn't know what's right, what's wrong, what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing. He volunteered. Other people that are there were conscripted, and there's all these interactions with different characters. And he's essentially a good person at heart, but then towards the end of the film, he starts, you know, going towards doing these more evil kind of acts. Then he pulls himself up, and throughout it's this whole kind of mix of emotions of, what would I do in his situation? I can empathize with what he's doing right now, or with what that character's doing right now. But then again, that's so wrong. Why are they doing that? And I think Platoon to me presents that really well, because it sets up the tension that these soldiers were feeling and the emotions and all that kind of stuff. But then it gives you the other side of, no, this is still objectively right, because we had, the two different characters essentially were Barnes and I forget his character's name, but Willem Dafoe. They were the two opposing characters. So you had Barnes in this collective groupthink with the soldiers that followed him, and it was, let's do whatever we want to these people, these villagers, and all that kind of stuff. And so they presented that side, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes Willem Dafoe's character and starts beating him up. They have this big argument, and right there, it's like that's the perfect way to present this. Is you've got one side, okay, you can kind of understand these guys are really frustrated, their friend's just been killed, and then no, hang on, this is objectively wrong, and you've got this character coming in and saying that. So, to me, it presented both sides, and it was just a well done film as well. But I've actually, I've heard people coming in and saying that Platoon was, they didn't like it because of the way that it presented soldiers and the atrocities and stuff like that. And I agree to a certain extent. I'm a big advocate for people who serve in the military, and so I don't like the over popularization of these atrocities that soldiers commit. But then again, reality is reality, and these things did happen in Vietnam, especially. So, and I thought it actually handled it pretty carefully. It gave those two arguments. So, anyway, I'll stop rambling now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think exactly what you're talking about is actually, something. I mean, that's part of the art form of making these films, is making them making them for an audience to talk about. Not that they're, because I don't think that that they're necessarily pushing an agenda, but it should be thought provoking. It should make you want to watch it. It should make you want to discuss it. That's what a movie, to me,
Mm,
that's what a lot of movies should do. Whether it's a comedy, whether it's a drama, or anything like that. I mean,
yeah.
even documentaries. Even documentaries are the same way. They should still have that same sort of feeling to them, where it makes a person want to talk about it. And we see these movies like Terminator, Dark Fate, and even Charlie's Angels, and they don't make you want to talk about them.
No,
And
you want to talk about it, but in a completely different way.
right. And like I said, and prime example is, like I said, the Dora the Explorer movie. Not a great movie, but when I got out of the theater, I wanted to talk about it because I wanted to let people know, like, dude, this movie, when I seen the trailer, it looked cheesy as hell, but the movie is actually pretty good. Because
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
it's
Yeah.
one of those things, you don't want one of these good movies to get buried by one of these movies that's actually bad, that people don't like, that
Mm,
everybody's talking about. And
yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's just the
Well,
world of
I think
movies.
I was joking on a stream last night with General Zod and those guys and and LB as well, and we were saying that we think that Charlie's Angels will be released on DVD well before Christmas. It'll be out on Blu-ray, so just in
Definitely,
time for
definitely
Christmas.
digital.
Yeah, well, exactly, because it got made 8 million its first week. It'll probably make 3 million its second week. So by the 3 to 4 week mark, it's probably going to be making like $20, and Elizabeth Banks will be out the front of the theaters just begging for money. Come on, please, come come and see this film.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And again, that's just a sad deal. Well, anyway, gosh, it's already been an hour. Thank you so much for being here.
Already. Wow.
Yeah, I know. That's time flies when you're having fun. But I want to say thank you to everybody in the chat. I'm sorry we didn't really get to any of your questions or anything. It's always a special occasion when we have guests here on the show. Now, before I let you guys go, I want to let you guys know you need to follow Stevie J's Reviews. Go follow his YouTube channel. You can look him up, Stevie J's Reviews. Check him out on Twitter. I'm not. Do you have an Instagram and a Facebook as well?
I've got Instagram. Yeah, same thing. Stevie_J_reviews. Yeah.
Yeah, go give him a follow. Very very well spoken gentleman. In case you can't tell, he knows his stuff when it comes to movies. Very good reviewer, and I just want to let you guys know, go check him out. But also, don't forget that tomorrow is New Comic Book Day out at your local comic book shop. So make sure that you get out and support your local comic book shop. They have all kinds of nerdy things out there. I'll be bringing some reviews here on the channel very very soon. Probably some of them releasing later tonight. I do have an actual another video that I have queued up and ready to go, talking about, if you're into comic books and you've been reading the X-Men, and you don't want to pull all of these 6 titles, you can definitely go out there and, hopefully my video will give you a little more insight into which ones that you're reading. But that's all we've got for the morning movie chat this morning. Again, thank you so much to Stevie J's Reviews for coming on the show. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me again. And yeah, like you said, hour flies by because it's always fun to talk, and time flies when you're having fun. So yeah, really appreciate it, mate. Cheers.
All right, you all have a good day, and we'll see you all in the next video. Later.